you ever tried calling your friends around the world but then mess up the time difference? Maybe you woke up at 3 a.m. because you didn't realize your friend's 10 o'clock was their 10 o'clock, not yours. Time zones. Can't live without them, but you can't live with them. They're a daily source of confusion, and yet they were actually invented to reduce confusion. So what gives? Why do we have time zones? To answer that, let's hop back to where every town kept its own time, and where charming chaos led to the system we have today. Along the way, we'll meet the man who literally set the world's clocks, and unravel why time zones can be so weird, and just maybe, ditch them all together. Imagine the world a few centuries ago, before anyone dreamed of standard time. If you lived in, say, 1700s London, noon was just when the sun was at the highest point in the sky. If you traveled 120 miles to Bristol, their local noon happened about 10 minutes later. Every city and town effectively had its own little time zone, based on the sun. Noon in each place was where the sun said it was noon. Simple enough. In those days, someone might carry a pocket watch set to their local time, and just change it whenever they went somewhere else. Nobody really minded because life moved so slowly. It took days or weeks to travel long distances, so by the time you arrived, you just adjusted to the local clock. There was no urgent need to synchronize with far-off places. Local time was kept by all kinds of methods. Towns usually had an official clock on a church or in the square, sometimes kept by a local townkeeper who watched the sun and changed the clock every hour. The phrase high noon literally meant the sun was at its peak in your town. But as the 19th century rolled around and humanity started shrinking the world, the Industrial Revolution brought new technologies. First, faster ships and the telegraph, and then the big one, railroads. Suddenly you could travel from Bristol to London in the matter of hours, not days. And that's where the trouble starts. Fast long-distance travel and instant communication created a patchy network of time zones. Picture this. In the 1850s, you're sending a telegram from New York to Chicago. You send it at 3 p.m. your time, but in Chicago, it might be 2:50 p.m. The message apparently arrived 10 minutes before it was sent, at least according to the clocks. Or you hop on a train at sunrise, and then after a speedy ride, you disembark at their sunrise because their clocks are behind yours. Travelers could depart from one town, and then, thanks to local time differences, literally arrive before they left. It's like a sci-fi time warp, except it's all an illusion created by instant clocks. At first, these quirks were just quirks, but as the railroad grew, the schedule became a tangled mess. Every train station set its local time by the sun, and there was no universal reference. By the 1870s, the United States had hundreds of local times, one virtually for every town. Each railway company tried to improvise a solution, and they created railway time. They even forced towns along the way to adopt their railway time. American railways had about 50 regional time standards by the 1850s. It helped a little, but it wasn't enough. There were still too many cooks in the timekeeping kitchen. By the late 19th century, railroads were the king of transportation, and in North America and Europe, they were absolutely fed up with all the chaos. Imagine trying to publish a timetable where every city on your route has a different clock. In the US, it got truly absurd. Over 300 local sun times were in use, a total nightmare for any travelers or train conductors. Railroad companies tried consolidating them, down to around 100 at one point. But even that solution meant a schedule could list 12 different time zones. Mistakes were inevitable. Trains got missed, and even worse, trains collided. There are stories of actual near misses, and actual collisions. Clearly, something had to change. And railroads took the matter into its own hands. In the United States and Canada, railroad managers banded together to devise a plan, standardize time across all regions. A key person in this project was William Frederick Allen, a railroad official and a publisher of the timetables. He and his peers knew they needed a simpler solution before the government stepped in. Allen proposed to divide the continent into just 4, eventually 5, time zones, each an hour apart. No more city-to-city madness, just one time for each broad region. They based each time zone off a central longitude meridian, spaced 15 degrees apart, so each time zone would be exactly 1 hour from the next. It was a beautifully simple idea on paper. Not everyone was on board at first. You can imagine some people saying, why should we use New York's time or London's time instead of our sun's local time? But practicality won out. On November 18th, 1883, the plan went live in North America. Railroad companies coordinated a grand switch at exactly noon on the 17th meridian. Standard time started for the Eastern time zone. For example, in New York, they had their local noon when the sun reached its peak, and a few minutes later, when the clock hit 12 p.m. again, they essentially had another noon. Imagine the confusion for people, saying, didn't we just have noon? Why is it noon again? It was a small price for getting trains to run on time. After the 2 noons day, most communities adjusted quickly. Within a year, almost everyone in the US and Canada was using the new standard railway time. What started off as rail convenience started to be the way that everyone kept time. Standard time zones proved to be so useful that governments made it law. In the US, it wasn't until 1918 that Congress officially made it a law. By then, society had already embraced it. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Britain had been a step ahead. As early as 1847, British railways had adjusted to using London's time. By 1880, the UK had already passed a law to make GMT the official time. The era of local times was ending. But the story wouldn't be complete without a global throttling engineer who helped take time zones worldwide. thanks to a missed train. So let's set the scene. In 1876, a railway station in Ireland, a Scottish-born Canadian engineer named Stanford Fleming is traveling, but something's about to go way wrong. Fleming reads the schedule and reads that the train is leaving at 7. He assumes that means 7 p.m. The train was actually a morning train, and by the time he shows up in the evening, the train was long gone, stranded by a simple AM versus PM misprint. Fleming is understandably frustrated, but instead of just grumbling, he has an epiphany. The way the world tells time is fundamentally flawed. Why should every little local have its own time? And why on earth are we using 12-hour cycles with AM and PM designations? Fleming's big thought started with a radical idea. What if the entire world used a 24-hour clock? He called this concept cosmic time. One clock to rule them all, not tied to a single city's local time. Think of it like a universal time visible to everyone, so no one would misunderstand a timetable again. 7 would be the same moment everywhere. Of course, Fleming still realized that people still lived in local day and night cycles, so he refined the idea to introduce time zones to cosmic time. In 1876, he proposed dividing the world into 24 different standard time zones, each 1 hour apart, spanning 15 degrees longitude. He even labeled them with letters to make it easy, a system that, fun fact, still echoes today in Zulu time. This was the birth of the time zone concept. Everyone would use local times, plus have a reference to the standard world time. Fleming wasn't the only person thinking about standard time, but he became the most passionate advocate. He had the clout and understanding of the railway problems at firsthand. He started lobbying internationally, writing papers and attending conferences to pitch his system. And he didn't just talk, he lived his idea. He commissioned a custom pocket watch with 2 faces. Imagine whipping out a 2-faced pocket watch to explain to people your newfangled time idea. Thanks to Fleming's tireless campaigning and the benefits of standard time, momentum grew. The North American Railway adopted it in 1883. The very next year, in 1884, the International Meridian Conference was held in Washington, D.C., attended by delegates from 12 dozen countries. This is where global time zones truly became official. The diplomats agreed on a few key things. They choose the prime meridian, 0 longitude, to pass through Greenwich, London, making Greenwich the reference for the world. This wasn't a given, though. French delegates fought for Paris. Second, the conference recommended that the world be divided into 24 time zones, each 1 hour apart, exactly how Fleming proposed. The idea of Fleming's cosmic time is now universal time, effectively a modern version of a single world time standard. One by one, countries adopted these zones. It wasn't instant, though. Some kept their local times for a bit longer. But by 1900, the patchwork was largely gone. Stanford Fleming went down as the man who gave the world time. Not literally the concept of time, of course, but a workable global time system. If you look at the world time zone map today, you might notice that they're labeled with letters. Those letters, that's a little echo of Fleming's plan still in use. So by the late 1880s, we've got the world running on unified time zones. Problem solved, story over. Happily ever after, right? Well, not so fast. Time zones do work. They solve the basic problem of each city keeping a completely different time. But the Earth and human society is complicated. And that means time zones turned out to be a bit messier in practice. Let's start with the basics on how they're supposed to work. The Earth is 360 degrees around, and it spins on its axis every 24 hours. Divide 360 by 24, and you get 15 degrees longitude per hour. In an ideal world, we'd have a neat vertical slice of the globe, 15 degrees wide, and everyone inside of each slice would keep the same time. Each zone would be 1 hour apart from the next. High noon in each zone would mean the sun is roughly overhead there. Sounds great in theory, but have you looked at the real time zone map? It looks like a jigsaw puzzle drawn by drunk politicians. The line zigzags around countries' borders, and some zones are 30 to 45 minutes off. And there's even one zone that's 13 and a half hours ahead of another. It turns out there are practical and political reasons on why the time zones are so weird. One reason, people don't want their clocks to be too far away from their local time. If your country sits in between those ideal 15-degree slices, you might split the difference. That's how we got half an hour and even quarter-hour time zones. For example, India is a huge country that could span 2 time zones. But to keep one national time, it chose a midway offset, India Standard Time. That puts the clock roughly on sync with the middle of India. They choose geographic logic. They pick what fits their sun best. And then there's the political logic. Time zones often bend borders, so the whole country or region can be on the same time. China provides a dramatic example. China spans 5 natural time zones wide, but since 1949, it officially became one time zone. The idea was to unify the country under one clock for administrative convenience. The result, if you're in far western China, your clocks look way ahead of the sun. We also have the wackiness of the international date line. That's the imaginary line running through the Pacific where if you cross it, you either skip a day or repeat a day. The line zigzags to avoid splitting countries, but it has led to some curious situations. The country of Samoa actually skipped an entire day in 2011. They went to sleep on December 29th and woke up on December 31st. Why? To move themselves to the other side of the date line. And we haven't even mentioned daylight saving times yet. That's when countries in the summer shift their clocks forward an hour to get even more sun. But I feel like I could make a whole video just talking about that. Now in our ultra-connected digital age, you might wonder, are time zones still worth the hassle? And oh boy, do time zones still cause a headache. If you've ever worked with a team spread across different cities, you know the pain. Research shows that even 1 hour difference can hurt communication and cause even more complexity. Think about it. That colleague that's just 1 hour behind you might have missed the entire first part of a meeting because they were late. Multiply that across bigger gaps 3, 8, and even 12. Coordinating a live meeting or deadlines becomes a complex puzzle. In the era of the internet, we have tools to cope. Calendar apps, for example, usually auto-adjust for time zone. Your phone magically changes time when you fly to another country. But despite all this, slip-ups still happen. Businesses wrestle with this constantly. Global conference calls that require someone to dial in at 11 p.m., and the stock market opens at an odd hour when you're across the world. And then there's the human factor. Jet lag aside, simply changing times as you travel can be a chore. If it's 5 p.m. in Los Angeles, you have to remember that it's 8 p.m. in New York. Time zones can make something as simple as wishing your friend happy birthday a math exercise. On the flip side, standard time zones are still holding up pretty well considering the strain. Our 24/7 digital world hasn't broken them yet. They still anchor us to reality day and night, which is important. But the frustration is real, and it leads to an interesting question. What if we just abolish time zones? Make one global time. It might not be as crazy as it sounds. Some very smart people have proposed this exact thing. Two professors from Johns Hopkins University, Steve Hank and Richard Henry, made a splash a few years ago that proposed that we enter the world on universal time, the time standard currently defined by atomic clocks. In their system, 9 a.m. UTC would be 9 a.m. everywhere. No conversions, no confusion. If it's 8 p.m. in London, it's 8 p.m. in New York. Basically, we would decouple the numbers on the clock from the sun and the sky. The benefits are tempting. Scheduling would be instant math because there is no math. You want to set a global meeting for 1,500 hours? It's 1,500 hours for everyone. Period. Endless confusion gone forever. Life would be simpler, said Henry. However, adopting one time for society would be a huge psychological shift. Remember our daily routines? Wake up, eat lunch at noon, go to bed by 9 p.m.? It's all tied to what the clocks say relative to daylight. If we went to one time, those activities wouldn't change, but the clock's readings would. Will it happen? Probably not. More than likely, we'll see some changes eventually. Perhaps less time zones and the permanent removalization of daylight savings. Gosh, I really hope that happens. But never say never. The idea of time zones themselves was radical in the 19th century. People resisted, but here we are, living by them. For now, time zones exist because they solved a real problem. They brought order to chaos at a time when they desperately needed it. Next time you curse time zones for a missed call, remember that without standard time, life would be even crazier. Till the day we agree on one global time, we'll just keep juggling those zones. So the next time someone asks, why do time zones exist? You can smile, tell them to pull up a chair, and tell them the whole story. Thank you for watching, and wherever you are in the world, have a great rest of your day, whatever time it is for you.